Welcome back to Q-Dads, guys. It's me, Ben, and today we're diving into episode 3 of Foundation. Now, compared to the first 2 episodes of this season, this one takes a noticeable step back in pace. Now, it's slower, more measured, and honestly feels like one of those classic chess piece episodes. One that moves all the characters into the right positions on the board for what's coming next. Now, while not heavy on action, there are some fascinating little details of lore and character development sprinkled throughout. Now, one of the biggest takeaways from this episode for me is the growing sense of that mythology of gods that may play a larger role this season. There are hints dropped everywhere, subtle references, some religious undertones throughout, and there's a lot of moments that I feel like the show is planting seeds for something bigger, but I'll touch more on that at the end. And of course, in this episode, it was confirmed the Cleon we are currently on. So in this episode, we have Cleon 23, 24, and 25. And remember, guys, no book spoilers. At Q-Dads, we only cover things from a TV show aspect only. So we start the episode off with a flashback set 3 years prior, following Dawn and learning how he first made contact with Gale. This all kicks off because Dawn was investigating psychohistory and Calais' 9th proof of folding, which already tells us that he was dabbling in some pretty forbidden knowledge. And what stood out for me in these scenes was the Imperial Library, that sheer scale of it, packed with all these relics and ancient texts. And I think it's a rare moment where the show reminds us of so much history that galaxy is actually carrying. And yet you could question in this day and age, why aren't things digitised? Now, I understand keeping a copy, but surely in this advanced technological world, Dawn should be able to bring up this on a device. But also, I do love the attack on wearing gloves in an old library. Brilliant touch. Now, Dawn eventually meets Gale in a quiet little tea shop, and this begins as a simple conversation, but turns into a secret 3-year-long dialogue. Now, together, they discuss shaping the future of humanity, and I love that Gale even referenced the past Cleons in their chats. Now, these moments were a nice break from, the usual cold political manoeuvring of Empire. And it's also because of his old antics as a previous Dawn that the facial scramblers are no longer available too. Now, one key reveal here is that Gale had no idea that Demoiselle was in possession of the Radiant. And that's huge because it implies that even the real Harry, before disappearing with Calais, might not even know either. Did virtual Harry secretly hand over a copy without telling anyone? Or is there another layer of manipulation at play here? But either way, this is a plot thread that I think will come back up later in the season. It probably also means that Demoiselle isn't aware that Gale and Harry also have the Radiant. So I think it's safe to say that all of Harry's new data is currently locked away from Demoiselle. Now, from there, the focus shifts to the looming threat of the Mule. Now, much of this episode for me, I think, revolves around trying to figure out how to contain him. Literally, as Dawn proposes to put an enclosure around Calgon to trap the Mule and his influence. But of course, as always with Foundation, nothing is ever that straightforward. And we actually get to see the Mule in this episode in the middle of a party. And here's where things get interesting, and also a little frustrating, if I'm honest. Now, Pritchard's big plan to gather intel on the Mule completely falls apart. And instead of this, tense cat and mouse game that I expected, he basically gets mentally overpowered, panics and bails. Now, I wasn't overly impressed with this scene, and it felt like his character kind of lost all momentum in just one single moment. Although, we did get a nugget of information here, which will be key in future episodes, and that is the fact that Pritchard is a mentalic.
You're like me. Who is Gale Dornick?
And this is because when the Mule kind of locked on with that barrier, he said, "You are like me." And of course, this mental barrier that hit him is the same that we saw in Season 2 throughout Tellenbond's storyline. So this must be how he eventually teams up with Gale, especially now he has the name of Gale Dornick. Do they connect through thought? But more interestingly here is that the Mule asks who Gale Dornick is, implying that he's yet to meet her, or even speak with her, or even know who she is. So this leads me to believe that the shots of the Mule we saw in Season 2 are actually a slightly in the future version of the current Mule, which based on what Gale saw kind of makes sense. So what this leads to me is that could the Mule actually have been guided by someone else? Now, it's clear that Gale and Harry are being guided by Calais, and the fact that Calais said we in the previous episode, implying that there are more of whatever she is. Could there be an opposing force to Calais that's guiding the Mule, telling him about his future battle with Gale and the power of the Second Foundation? But not only that, later in the episode when he takes the jump gate, he starts to talk about being controlled in a way. Now, we assume it's metaphorical, but maybe it's not, and this is a hint towards the truth behind his conquest. Let us know your thoughts. But of course, one final note here. Clearly, the Mule, like other Mentalics, can sense the presence of others like him. But it seems that the Mule needs to be in a close proximity. Now, if I remember right, Bond could do it from a lot further away and almost sense people from other planets. And I believe Gale could do this too. Could this be a limitation of the Mule? As in Season 2, he's already asking where the Second Foundation is, but he can't sense it. And really, others like him should be able to easily find that location. But that's us presuming that the Second Foundation is full of Mentalics. Again, let us know your thoughts. But anyway, that leaves Beta and Mallow to pick up the slack, leading to a tense introduction between Mallow and the Mule. Now, Mallow is forced to insult him, going straight for a jab at his manhood, no less.
Tin pot dictator holding out his little tin pot, begging for enough coins to pay someone not to laugh at the syphilis-chewed ruin he's got between his legs.
Now, this immediately flips the Mule's mood, which we get this chilling moment where the Mule then peels the skin off Mallow's hand. But here's the thing, did he use his powers in this scene? That opens up the real intriguing question for me. The control on Mallow is led purely by fear, meaning that there are limitations to what he can potentially do. Now, we've discussed this before, but this scene shows it for me. Now, interestingly, me and Steve actually have opposing opinions. So Steve thinks that in this scene, he uses his powers to get Mallow to insult him. And you could tell this from Mallow's face afterwards, where he was shocked by what he'd just said. Where for me, I think that there was no power used at all. And in fact, it was a bit more of Mallow's ego that fueled him to insult him even further, and then was shocked afterwards because of what he just said and was surprised that the Mule actually enjoyed it. But again, underlined with that fear. But also in this scene, touching on the Music Man for a second. Now, does he serve a purpose beyond theatrics? Maybe even as a way to recharge or stabilise the Mule's abilities? Is he there to help soothe and calm down the Mule? Helping him relax with the potential stress of the power he has? Or is it there acting as a drug, like with Day and the spores, and actually fuels him even more, and that's why he's so passionate to get him back? I just found it really interesting, and the fact that the Mule was about to push a thought into Mallow to tell him to be peeled, but then stopped by the flash of a light. Then obviously Mallow escapes, but the Mule sees this. Why couldn't he push a thought to stop him running at the point of escape? And I think this is down to the fact that maybe the Mule needs eye contact for his powers. Now, could be why he does get close up to people. Annoyingly though, it doesn't explain why he can then control people in the ships in the episode 1. I'm just trying to dig a little bit deeper into how his powers work. And as mentioned previously, we only cover this from a TV show only. So if you do know, because you're a book reader, just leave that one and come back to us. Now, meanwhile, back in Empire, Day is making some moves. Now, we see him kind of confined with one of his guards, planning to go off the grid and escape the life of an emperor entirely. Now, in this exchange for his loyalty, he offers to give up his nanites to save the daughter. Now, this is a real deeply human moment here. But for me, this shows both the caring and good nature by ultimately sacrificing his own life for someone else. But at the same time, we know this is driven by fear of Demoiselle. So, is this genuine, or is it for a selfish purpose only? And also, we do get a quick glimpse of that helmet that we've seen in the trailers that Day's wearing, so looking forward to this season and that journey ahead. Things though do take a sharp turn when Day reveals to Song about the truth about Demoiselle being a robot. and that blows up spectacularly. It turns out that Song is part of a religion that worships robots, one believed to have been extinct for centuries. Now, that revelation kind of reframes so much about her character and motivations, whilst also raising questions about Demoiselle herself. Why wipe Song's memory if worship would have made her even more loyal? By the end, the episode loops back to the Mule and Empire attempting to negotiate peace. Now, unsurprisingly, it goes nowhere, and the Mule essentially declares open hostility, and Dawn's plan to contain him collapses when Day refuses to authorise the enclosure, leaving him with nothing but surveillance as their fallback. Now, one of the quieter, more fascinating moments comes right at the end when Empire continues with their tradition of toasting to strength, wisdom and fortitude.
Drink up, drink up.
Strength.
Wisdom. Fortitude.
And this was accompanied by a callback to the gods themselves when Day says, "Gods can't save you here." Now, is that foreshadowing? Now, coupled with the introduction of Song's religion, the show is clearly building towards something spiritual or even godlike in nature. Well, I believe so anyway. But overall, episode 3 definitely leans into being a setup episode. It's very light on the action, but heavy on positioning characters and sprinkling in that lore that eventually will pay off later on. Now, while some of the scenes, like Pritchard's plan, didn't land as strongly as they could have, what really stood out for me was the subtle but deliberate layering of religious themes. Now, please do hit me in the comments if you think I'm way off, but between the toasts of Day and the quick mention at the end of the episode to Song's robot worshipping faith, and even the Mule's growing aura of myth, technically, it feels like Foundation is steering into the idea of deities. Or at least what happens when mortals try to play God, like they have done over the past couple of seasons with Harry and Day. So, in season 3, could we actually see gods introduced? Whether literal or symbolic, the hints for me, I think, are building and building. Now, I'm interested in the storyline of Day and his potential moment to go off planet, but it does make me look at Song and Demoiselle. Why did Demoiselle have all of her memories wiped? And why is that religion banned? Surely Demoiselle would benefit from this and potentially build her own amount of followers that could be easily manipulated to just follow her every word, considering she is a robot. But I do wonder how far this religious seed is actually planted. And are we going to see this crop up again in episodes to come? And of course, you could say that Demoiselle, yes, had to wipe the memories, or say she wiped the memories and really she's killed her. Because obviously one of her program is to not let anyone know that she is a robot, to protect Empire at all costs. But she could have used that to her advantage, and I think that was a bit of a failure on Demoiselle's part there. But overall, guys, for this episode, I think it was a filler. Maybe, but it's a kind of a filler that's quietly shuffling the deck and setting up for something much bigger. But of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments as always. What do you think about the new religion creeping up that potentially threatens Demoiselle's own beliefs? Am I just barking up the wrong tree completely? And what do you think of Gale and Dawn's relationship? Will she be happy that he couldn't get the enclosure to work? And finally, do you think that Pritchard was a mentalic? Let us know in the comments, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, as it really does help the channel to grow. And as always, we'll catch you next time with something new.